And the big thing is a couple things. First off, scale, size. Remember, economy needs a scale. One worker, no bargaining power. But if all the workers unify, they have real power. And there are two different basic types of unions. One is called a craft or trade union. And what that means is this working yet? Those are skilled workers. And these are usually pretty narrow unions of just a few workers. And when I mean skill, someone who has a particular skill or profession. When I first started teaching, I was in a craft or trade union. It was only teachers in our Helen Education Foundation. That was it, just teachers. So you had to have certain, degree, and you work in that field, that makes you a professional, and only teachers. And so they're pretty small. So you're gonna have like the head of the AFFL is gonna be cigar maker, or the engineers, or coopers, very particular skills. And then industrial unions are unskilled. Now, when I mean unskilled, I don't mean that they don't have skills or they're not smart or something like that. It just means that they're not hired for that they're not trained for that particular profession. And so there are people who might have to be trained on the workplace or have a rudimentary skills in something. And most workers are unskilled workers. Now, I repeat, that's just a terminology for workers. Does not mean you don't have skills. And these are going to be bigger. But the thing about it is scale. And this is a picture. This is actually from the IWW, a worker that'd be really, a union that'd be really prominent in the early 20th century. They were huge in Phoenix. Huge. They were the Wobblies. All the workers together make a big fist instead of all individual. And companies want to negotiate with individuals. If it's a big company and one of their 1,000 workers comes in and says, I demand better wages and better salary. Yeah, good. I'm glad you want that. And you keep demanding that and you're out of here. Or we'll put you in the worst job possible. When they all come in together, they have real power. They all have real power. And so we'll come back to that in just one second. But unionism is developing. Now, there's two different types of unions that's going to come out of this panic. The first one is the Knights of Olymp. And I'm giving you two examples of them because there's more, but we don't have time to go through all of them. But they're two different styles. Terence Powderly would be the most famous leader, even though he's not the one who started. You notice it started in 1869, but after the panic, going into the 1880s, when workers realized the power they could have, they organized. Stevens would take, or Powderly would take over from Uriah Stevens and build that into a union that's going to have well over 1 million members. And I picked this picture because I think we can all see why. This was an era of great facial hair. I mean, they understood facial hair back then. I mean, when's the last president to have a mustache? You have to go back to Taft. I want now. Yeah. I should. I'd make it work, but no. Could. So, what they talked about was one big union. All workers together. And when I say all workers, I literally mean all workers. Not just men, but women, and not just whites. They not only opened the door, they actively recruited blacks, and in some areas, some of the Chinese immigrants. So this was a pretty, a pretty radical union for the time. And they looked at the wage system created by capitalism and they hated it. And what they thought was, we need to change the wage system into a cooperative system, where the workers and the employees have control together over the machines, the capital, the workplace. I'm not sure if that meant signing a good contract or literally the workers like running things. And they were never clear. But the workers have some more control. By the way, does that remind you of anything? Think about it. We might come back to that idea. And what they want to do is generally make the lives of workers better, more secure, safer, and their family life better. And there's a few things they want. For example, an 8-hour workday. And this is a Knights of Labor sign for an 8-hour workday. And it says 8 hours for sleep. And then this leisure time. Leisure is a development of the Industrial Revolution. Let me rephrase that. People did have leisure time before the Industrial Revolution. But before the Industrial Revolution, you were basically your own boss. You decided when you worked, when you didn't. Remember that cottage industry, the putting out system? You worked when you wanted to. You didn't work when you want to. In capitalism, you got to work when the machines are. So you work when they tell you, and then you're done when they don't need you anymore. And so the development, the modern sense of leisure time came out of the Industrial Revolution. This idea where I can recover after work. Well, the average workday was 12 to 14-hour shifts. With electricity, the common practice would be 2 12-hour shifts a day, 2 shifts a day. You see what an 8-hour workday would do? Not only give people a little bit of time to recover, and can you imagine 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, all year? Like a Carnegie School, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Besides, you got Sundays off and then 2 holidays, 4th of July and Christmas Day. You don't have time to recover. You don't have time even to think. And so their goal for an 8-hour day was not only to give you more leisure time, but what would it do to wages? Okay, let's think. You need 2 shifts, 2 sets of workers to work 2 12-hour shifts, right? How many sets of workers do you need? If it's an 8-hour day, you need 1/3 more workers. That will dramatically increase the demand for workers. You increase the demand for workers with the supply being the same, and wages will go up. They'll go up for skilled and unskilled workers. 8-hour workday is a huge boom for wages. And for places that are really worker-friendly, like Scandinavia, like Sweden, they're actually gone down to a 30-hour work week. Is now their goal. France is 34. Germany 36. Somebody working outside my hallway?
Is there something working outside my hallway?
He took off, yeah. So this is Partridge Hall. I earned this hallway. So with that, next, working conditions. Remember capital competition, unsafe working conditions, that's a cost. There's an incentive for the company, incentive for management to have unsafe working conditions. And I don't care about the morality of it or whether they do it or not. There's an incentive to have unsafe working conditions because you make more money. So what they're saying is we need safer working conditions, but also things working condition-wise like a bathroom break. If you don't have a bathroom break, it's a big deal. Ask somebody who works at a Goop or an Amazon distributing center. They can tell you about that. Where they got to wear black, or they got to wear adult diapers on the job, so we'll let them have a bathroom break. That's a big deal. People need the jobs. And what else? Like a lunch break. Or for that matter, if you're hurt on the job, you have some kind of, well, in the 20th century, they would start calling them workers' comp. You know what I mean by that, workers' compensation. That would happen to labor unions who get that. Also, like vacation time, paid sick leave. Heck, just sick leave, not paid. A lot of workers still don't have that today. I do have a union. We do have paid sick leave. We actually have pretty good paid sick leave. But with that, those are our working conditions. And I didn't put these in here, and I'll talk more about these, but that also includes things like weekends, crazy things like that, and also old age pension. You know what I mean by an old age pension? Yeah, it's retirement. And eventually, unions would win that. We have a national old age pension if you work. What is it? That's Social Security. You might not think about Social Security now. Trust me, every year you get older, you think about Social Security. 62 is when you start collecting it, but you won't get full. Now it's 66, so you get full. You get partial at 62. When I retire, let's see, since I'm much older than that, anytime. Now the benefits aren't that much, but it's still better than nothing. And so it's 66, it'll soon go up to 67. Yeah.
Is there a reason why it's Saturday, Sunday, not Sunday, Monday for the weekend?
Why Saturday? Monday was always the traditional work week, the beginning of the week, like a market day.
Okay.
So working conditions, and also things like healthcare. You know, things like that were all examples of working conditions. By the way, I should add healthcare. In 1880, they could actually kind of almost start like curing you now. You could go to a hospital and maybe come out. Hospitals in 1850 were places to go be comfortable while you die, which I guess is something. But, and if you didn't have much money, or if you had money, you did it at home. Hospitals used to be cured, but it's really, really expensive. That's like a math movie. Next, women's rights and civil rights. Am I here just? Maybe it's just me. Why are you lurking in there? What's going on here? We have rules. They believe in equal rights, or at least some believe in equal rights. It's more complex than that. But at least more legal rights for women and the right to vote. And also equal civil rights. Now, especially think about 1870 or 1880s in the United States. That means full enforcement of the 14th Amendment. Equal rights right here. There's another one. And so, partially because they believed in equality and hated social Darwinism, but also they thought they would support the Knights if you give people rights. You know, which is the way politics works. Also, end child labor, not just because you notice it. I had it up there all day, and every other period didn't even notice. You're the first one who. See, this is why this is maybe the best class I've ever had. My sixth period comes in, and I'm like, jeez, right? 'Cause the standard is here, and even good classes are here. You buying that? And I've never said that in fourth period, did I? You're going to go far in this class. Okay, so child labor, not because 20% of children by 1900 were working 12 to 14-hour days. And think about a 10-year-old working a 12-hour day breaking coal in a mine. Literally breaking it with their feet, the smaller pieces. It's a stop on. What's their future going to be? A short, brutish life where the best thing they get hope is to be in the coal mine, but maybe not breaking coal anymore. In fact, in New York, oh yeah, they fall just in an angle. This is in fire. If they weren't killed. In New York City, for example, they had so many kids in some neighborhoods working full days that they would run schools at night. So they could go to work for 14 hours and then go to school. Which I'm all for, right? We'll put you people to work. We got a moat to build. But not only that, you know, the idea of, I want something better for my children. Remember this whole, we like our children now. But what does it do to wages? You get rid of child labor, what does it do to wages for adults? It raises wages because you limit the supply of workers. By saying kids can't work, wages go up for all workers, skilled and unskilled. Wages go up. Wait, what a great thing for companies. It not only child labor increases the pool of workers, by definition, you can pay kids less. And so that drives everybody's wages down. That's why I want to bring back child labor for my own personal workforce, right? And yes, they still talk about when in 2017, that's one of the things the Trump administration talked about doing, getting rid of child labor regulations. The Bush administration talked about that too. That went nowhere. I mean, I'm sure if they got a bigger majority in 2020, they would. Also, government regulation. And the big thing about government regulation is to break up monopolies. Break up monopolies. Break up monopolies, that not only encourages more competition, better products, but it raises wages dramatically. And one thing that happens, if companies start competing for workers, they will also do things like, okay, not only will your raise go up, your wages go up, we'll give you another week of vacation. Or maybe we'll give you a day of vacation once a year. That's the way it might have been then. It's a big incentive to get some different benefits. But they were concerned about getting too much involved in like direct action like strikes. They talked more about politics like almost a labor party. And so the Knights of Labor, in a way, hamstrung themselves. There were well over 1 million members by 1883, but by not directly involving in workplace actions, more generic, they never got, or they were always a little bit on the fringe. Now, remember those things. The other union we must mention is the American Federation of Labor, or the AFL. You see them now. I'm actually a member of now it's combined trade and industrial union, AFL-CIO, but back then it was always the AFL. Samuel Gompers was a cigar maker with also great facial hair. Where were you?
Lunch with grandma.
Okay. And Gompers, and I agree, if you have children, once again, come here, little Gompers. What have you done with Ticonderoga? Okay, with that, you can't trust Gompers. So with that, he was a cigar maker. But this is different. It's not one big union. It's a federation of small craft unions, of skilled workers. For example, or we'll get back to that. And the big thing about these craft unions were they accepted the wage system for the most part. I'm really having struggle. I'm struggling with this. I'm really having struggle, I said. And they were more for, they literally called it bread and butter or maybe a bigger piece of the pie. So, okay, the wage system pushes wages down. We just want a little bit higher wages. And if you look at this, this is actually from 1936, but it's, you know, we don't want trouble. These are strikers. We just want a fair living for our family. And so they accept it. And so 8-hour workday and working conditions, yes, they wanted better ones of those, but more in the terms of, okay, you're in charge, but write in our contract that we must have certain things. So, for example, you look at one of these contracts, they have all kinds of things like that. Written in. My contract has things like I can't be kept after a certain time. I can't be made to do things outside of school time. I get a half-hour duty-free lunch, they call it. You know, things like that. It's written in there. And they wanted higher wages. They didn't want this big cooperative system, higher wages. And part of that was getting rid of child labor. But you notice I didn't put down civil rights. I didn't put down women's rights. The AFL was not open to anybody that was not a white man. And that would be the norm until industrial unions will come out in the 1930s, like the CIO, that let everybody in, and the AFL would be forced to change. Partially because of Franklin Roosevelt. So with that, yeah.
So just like only white men? Or
White men, no, white men with skills. That's it. Only white men in trade. Unskilled workers not allowed in either. Just white men. No women. So women who would organize, they'd be outside of this union. And what they wanted was a collective bargaining agreement. So they would do a contract, we mentioned this once before, for all the workers. All the workers. And so the idea is one worker who would have no power, try to negotiate a contract, it'd be a pretty bad contract. They negotiate for all the workers, they have the power because they're together and organized to negotiate potentially a better contract. If the company, the employer will not do that, that's when they do a walkout, we'll soon call that a strike. And a part of that strike would be a boycott. Or other, let's say there was a store and the workers struck there. Other unions would boycott that store to help the strikers. It's actually, it's called, they will not cross their picket line. And that would be incredibly effective. it's now technically illegal. I'll get to that. It's 1947, partly after. We're pretty anti-union in this country. But strikes, and that's pretty effective. Especially if it's a place where they all walk out together. You might still have the machines, but you can't operate them if they all go together. One goes, you can make do. Two go, you make do. 1,000 can't. And so I mentioned yesterday, I think I did, about the LA Teachers Union. It's interesting, while we were talking, they were actually coming up with an agreement that the teachers union wasn't a total victory, but they won pretty big. Pretty big. So they signed a contract with smaller classroom sizes, having like nurses in the building. And you go to areas, especially poor areas, that's a big deal, and other things. And a little bit higher pay, because they're really underpaid there. And so that shows how strike, that's how it works. Also shows why companies hate unions. And starting today, another major city's teachers are going to strike. We haven't had one like in 30 years. Billings was like 15 years ago, and that got pretty violent. Strikers don't like strike breakers.
You were voting, weren't they gonna vote if they were gonna strike?
Who? In the city?
Yeah.
It's Denver.
And yeah,
And Denver voted to strike. There's teachers, about 96% of the teachers voted to strike. So they're going to strike. And knowing what happened in Denver School District,
does that include like
good luck. I hope they win. They have earned their seat.
Does that include like professors at like colleges? Do they like participate, or is it mostly?
No, well, this is just the teachers union. They all work in the school district.
Okay.
But professors have struck, yeah. Graduate assistants struck. Graduate assistants at a lot of big schools. And being that I was a graduate assistant at a college in graduate school, I know how badly they're treated. I wish I could have struck. But you're basically a slave. I did both. I was a teacher's assistant and graduate assistant coach. I was a slave. So with that, the craft union. Now look at these things down here. Look at the Knights and the AFL. Now remember, companies don't want unions at all. But if it's going to be a union, which would you rather have? Something like the AFL or something like the Knights? Yeah, the AFL. They basically accept the system. We just want a little better pay. So you just give them some crumbs, and they're fine. It might be more than crumbs, but okay, okay. Well, the Knights are saying we got to change the whole system, the whole way we run the company. The Knights are going to be bitterly attacked. We'll come back to this. Remember what the Knights do. But the Knights, and also remember what both of them wanted. And yeah, eventually they would want a progressive income tax and a few things. We'll get back to these things. I just want to get the base elements. Trust me, we got to talk a lot about taxes and everything. Please tell us about taxes. Who was thinking that earlier? Yeah, obviously. That's why you had that lunch with Gin. That's what my nephew calls me. Calls his grandmother. Another reaction that said, not just do we need unions, but more. The system is flawed, and that's the growth of modern socialism. And socialism, they're intensely anti-social Darwinistic. Anti-social Darwinistic. They looked at the class structure and said, this is not natural. It is not natural that have some people with a significant amount of wealth and some people barely make it and their kids starve. It's not right. And that's not natural. And it would be that argument that Charles Darwin would say why he hated the term social Darwinism so much. Human society is not the same as adaptations by species in a changing environment. We are humans. We can make decisions on how we treat each other. Technically. We look at, nah, I'm hungry. I'll take whatever I can get. So with that, by the way, I'm still hungry. I didn't eat enough.
Not enough pretzels today?
I ate 4 of those bags a day.
Comes with the best ever.
So with that, what they want is a classless society. When I mean classless society, what are you doing?
I'll give you my avocado.
Huh?
If you're hungry, you want avocado?
Actually, I do. But the texture's just. But I now like it. Classless society. And the thing about a classless society is to get rid of the difference between the upper and lower classes. No, they do not want everybody equal, but they want equal rights for everybody. If you're anti-social Darwinistic, that means you do not believe there should be not only class distinctions, but also no distinctions based on race or sex. So socialism, one, equal rights for sexes, equal rights for migrants. That's socialist. And what they said is, if we're going to have a classless society, what we need is workers control the means of production, AKA workers control the capital. Wait a minute. So workers will work together? Does that sound familiar? Didn't we? Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Yes.
How?
One of the Knights things.
Yeah, isn't that just like what the Knights wanted? The Knights were moderate socialists. There's a lot of connection. And a lot of the labor unions' ideas of what to do about booms and busts would be socialist. And what they said is if workers have more control over the capital, you get alleviate the differences between the classes, then you have true democracy. Or not only would it be just voters deciding maybe on a leader, but all the people deciding on political, economic, and social means, and all from the same avenue of power. True socialism, to their point of view, is the ultimate democracy. And ideally, it is. And this is a socialist banner from Britain. But doesn't that look familiar? Just like the one I showed you for the Knights of Labor. And here is a socialist banner for the United States. Solidarity and more leisure time, 8-hour day, voting rights for all. So, one thing about this, though. Their economic point of view would come from, in many ways, Karl Marx. In 1848, he would write the Communist Manifesto. He would also, 20 years later, write Das Kapital and really get out the main elements of it. But in 1948, he wrote the Communist Manifesto with a capitalist, Friedrich Engels, an Englishman, who, as a capitalist, his point of view was, oh, we're going to blow the system up. Now, they're looking at early capitalism and how horrifically dangerous these jobs were, the living conditions of people. And, you know, they did not really predict some of the technological changes that would come. But their economic treatise is actually really good, which would be clarified in Das Kapital. And if you got a little bit of time, I would recommend reading Das Kapital. It's only about 12,000 pages. So, why don't you just make that for weekend reading? Okay, so that's your homework for tonight. I've had to read parts of Das Kapital, and it's for a class year. I mean, obviously, many years ago, but I remember reading that. And it's one of those, the way it's written, and it's translated from German to English, and 1860s economics. I remember just reading this one and read like a paragraph, and like, I have no idea what I just read. And then go back and read it again. It's one of those that takes like 20 minutes to read like 5 sentences. Because of the, you know, the style and not used to the language. It was interesting, but yeah. But anyways, all of history is class struggle. So fighting between those who have the guns and those who don't. Or in medieval Europe, the landlords, the nobility, and the serfs, class struggle. But with the Industrial Revolution, now we have the capitalists and labor. But unlike serfs who were spread out over the countryside, capitalism has brought all the labor, the working class, together under one roof. And that's when real change can happen. They're not spread out. And he called them the bourgeoisie, and I mentioned this once before, the proletariat. But it means just capitalists and labor. Proletariat comes from the Roman Republic. And what happens is, because they have the machining, capitalism, it exploits the workers, it exploits labor. They're the wages. And this is one of these things that there is a big element of truth to this. You know, this is economically very correct. Whoever has the capital, they take the risk and get the profit. That's kind of the reward for the risk. But wages are decided by supply and demand. And so all the profit goes to the top. Now, there's an element of the risk, but that's the way it happens. But once you have more and more monopolies, that means more and more money focuses to the top. Remember, that's why the boom-bust cycle, he said, was proof that capitalism was flawed. Because the boom bust cycle, well, who does well in a bust? The big companies, people with wealth, which is by just their deflation, they have more wealth, or they can buy out their competitors. So there's an element of truth there. And so what Marx is saying, eventually workers won't let it take it as much anymore. And the few crumbs that they get thrown won't be enough. And eventually they'll see all this wealth they're creating, and they're going to say, that is unfair. That wealth is leading to a political and economic crisis. But now we're all together and organized. It can only happen, he said, under true capitalism, where you can have the revolution, where the class struggle, this time, workers will have the power to overthrow the capital. But you notice I put down a question mark. In 1848, Marx assumed that the revolution would have to be violent, because the capitalists are going to hold on to what they have and fight. And if they're going to fight, they have all the power. So it's going to be a bloody, horrible fight. But later on, he and other capitalists looked at that and said, you know, maybe the revolution could be in the ballot box. Maybe a new constitution. Maybe just a change in the social and economic norms. And so there's going to be a fight within socialism. Is it going to be a violent revolution? Or is it going to be, you know, a change in society? The idea is workers do deserve more rights. And one more thing. Let's say it is a violent revolution. What next? Marx does a very good job economically explaining some of the good and bad things about capitalism. It lays it out, especially in Das Kapital, really lays it out. But then it becomes fantasy land. First off, we need a dictatorship of the proletariat. The workers are going to have a dictatorship to train the rest of society, to get them ready to build society for that perfect socialism, that perfect democracy. Because there's still going to be a lot of people who learn from capitalism still think only in terms of controlling all the wealth. All those capitalists are left alive after the revolution. We have to re-educate them. Maybe set up camps. Yes, that should sound really scary. And yes, that would happen in, let's say, the People's Republic of China, or the gulags in the Soviet Union. And then, when the people's dictators decide that we're ready for perfect socialism, it will just appear. Perfect socialism, and the states will eventually be unnecessary. We won't need money anymore. Organized religion, which Marx saw as just kind of controlling people under the system, would just wither away. Not needed anymore. Do you see where I said about the outcome? It's basically revolution, then magic, perfect socialism. And that's the problem. But I think you probably see a bigger problem if we ever get to the magic of perfect socialism. Just imagine you put some people and say, you're now the dictators. You have all the power until the people are ready. The people will never be ready. It stops right here. Have you heard of Joseph Stalin? The people were never ready. Or Mao Zedong of the People's Republic of China. They never get to this point. They create really nasty dictatorships where they just take all the power. In fact, in the Soviet Union, they would still talk about workers, and it's all for the workers and workers. And it was just a small group of communist leaders that ran everything and owned everything. Happened in Cuba. Happened in Venezuela. Happened in Wyoming. It happened just now. So with that, and then the left wing, these are socialists, are going to be bitterly divided. If we write anything else, I'll explain it one more time. So we have to do this a few different times. But this is your left, right? On the left are people, that's what socialists are, anti-social Darwinistic. On the right, those are people more social Darwinistic, laissez-faire capitalism, and they're on this side. By the way, what's the most extreme this way? Even more extreme than that. Anarchists. Who's the most extreme this way? Yeah, fascists, Nazis. And in the middle, you have people kind of with capitalism, and we have liberals and conservatives. Conservatives are more, laissez-faire. Liberals want a little more interaction. Liberals are more left. Conservatives are more right. That's why if someone is a liberal, someone might insult them and say, "You're a commie. You're a Stalin." And if someone's a little more conservative, they might say, "You're Hitler," which of course both are ridiculous. No, because most of the time they're ridiculous. Okay, so the left bitterly divided. Moderate socialists believed in this political process, like the Knights of Labor, or Eugene Debs. This is the German Social Democratic Party. Debs, after the railroad strike in 1894, he would run for president 5 times. He'd actually be maybe the most, well, going into the 20th century, he's probably the second most popular American politician after Teddy Roosevelt. And he had great influence. But more radical socialists thought, you're working with the system. I should add, this is what the moderate socialists want. Just listen, because this should sound very familiar. An 8-hour working day, better working conditions, health care, weekend, vacation, sick leave, no child labor, equal rights for men, or equal rights for all men and women. What does that sound like? Oh, and a more cooperative idea of running a company. Moderate socialists wanted basically the same thing as the Knights. And to this day, you go to countries that are called democratic socialists, but they're very moderate socialists. Places like, these, Scandinavia, Denmark. It's like the happiest people in the world live in Denmark. And Sweden, those kind of places. That's moderate socialism. That's moderate socialism. Slight, to a lesser degree, France and Belgium, but that's all over the place. Germany, moderate socialism. But not like the Swedes. No, the United States is not. We have some socialist things, like public school. But. And then the more radical one said, any agreement in the political system, you're a traitor. And I'm lumping them together to say they're communists, even though it's more complex than that. And they thought it's got to be an international, and it's got to be a revolution. And this revolution might be violent. And we might have to start blowing some people up. We might have to start killing some capitalists. In fact, some of these communists became so radicalized that they wanted to have the revolution before the country even had the Industrial Revolution, like China. Or Russia, just beginning it, and they had their revolution. And then the most radical ones thought they were both traitors to the cause. Anarchists. And anarchism, they believed in socialism, but they believed any hierarchy. Like leadership of a party, you just created a class. And so their idea, their ultimate goal was everybody literally equal. So no one is on top of each other. We all have equal rights to be heard and make decisions. And so what they wanted was individual action to rally other individuals. Individual action, no leadership. And so they wanted individual acts, political, economic, or even more radical acts. And they wanted to blow up the existing order. Thus the term anarchism. They want to create anarchy. You blow up the old order and replace it with perfect socialism. Which, by the way, I want to talk about magic. And there's some flaws in the thinking. Now, it didn't mean they want to actually blow it up. Here's the most famous anarchist in America, Emma Goldman. And she wanted to do that through the political process. Radical. She was not going to stand down for anybody. Wanted more rights for all people, men and women, regardless of race or sex. Yeah. And that's right, I just said that. That didn't make sense, but moving on. And she was considered so dangerous after World War I that the United States would exile her to the brand new Soviet Union, kick her out of the country because of her demand for equal rights. But she wanted to do it in the political process. Many anarchists thought that is a waste of time, and they believed in revolutionary terror. If we could commit political acts of terrorism to show that the society does not function, it'll blow up. And they called it propaganda of deed. You show by your individual action you're not afraid and you want change. And that's where you get this anti-anarchist picture right here that they just want, you know, kill the law, kill the police, destroy property. But beginning in the 1870s, after the panic, there was a wave of anarchist terrorist attacks all over the world. Hundreds of them. Some just absolutely spectacular. Trying to show that the system was weak, many involving bombs. To give you an example, I'll come back to that picture. I'll come back to the picture. They literally started biting the heads on them. So here, in an opera house in Spain, this is a picture from a French journal. This is where a bunch of the wealthy and government leaders went. They set up a bomb killing 20 and wounding 80. In the General Assembly in France, they set up a bomb killing 15 and wounding over 100 French assemblymen. Yeah.
So what made these anarchist attacks versus just like terrorism?
Well, they're terrorists. They're terrorists. Any terrorism is an act where you believe you want to get a political outcome. You think no one's listening.
But like, how did they know like the anarchists was that all?
Oh, then they would come out, and then anarchists would say, yes, this is one of ours. But they wouldn't say it as someone leader, because that would be. We got one more thing to write down. Here is the premier of France getting blown up. Here's the assassination of the president of Italy. Here's the assassination of the president of the United States, William McKinley, by an anarchist. The Tsar of Russia was literally blown in two by an anarchist bomb. In fact, blown off with the hip down, and he lived for nearly 4 hours like that. I can't even wrap my mind around that. Now, the last thing I said, so look at all these attacks, and look how scary this might be. If you wanted to discredit a labor union, what would you call them? Because don't they have many of the same ideas? But not just anarchists. This is what you got to get. Bomb-throwing anarchists. Bomb-throwing anarchists. Here come those anarchists. They had their bombs. That made them scary. But you said that, what union were bomb-throwing anarchists? Nice. That's nice. And that's where we get. Are we going to learn about this? I think we're going to very next time. So we have a couple more unions, and then we get into. Don't forget the quiz tomorrow. How many questions do you want? 12, 15, 10, 20. I'm adding as quick as I can, so up to 56. Any more? Tulip Mania won. Everybody voted for it.
Oh, good.
It's a Stalinist election.
Oh, no.
See you. Goodbye. Right when you find work, everybody. And hang by your thumbs. Don't forget that.